In a hotel ballroom, the lights dim. A bass-heavy intro track kicks in. A countdown hits 0. And a room full of adults wearing matching lanyards applauds like they've been waiting for this moment all year. This is not a revival meeting. It is not a concert. It is not a graduation. It is a conference. And depending on who you ask, the global conference and events industry is either a vital engine of business, science, and culture, or a strangely normalized system that runs on hype, social pressure, and the promise of transformation. In other words, a system that can feel a little cult-like. Not because conferences are evil, not because travel is bad, not because people should stay home and stare at spreadsheets forever, but because the modern conference has developed rituals, status symbols, and a kind of emotional gravity that pulls people in, even when they are not sure what they are getting back. Market research firms routinely put the broader events and event management market in the trillion-dollar range. One estimate places the global event management market at about $1.16 trillion in 2024, with growth projections continuing into the next decade. That number is so large, it almost stops meaning anything. So translate it into what it looks like on the ground. It looks like major convention centers that operate like airports. It looks like exhibit halls the size of small neighborhoods. It looks like entire city blocks booked out. Not for tourism, but for activations. It looks like tens of thousands of meetings and congresses moving around the world each year. ICCA's reporting, for example, tracked almost 10,000 meetings in 2023 and more than 11,000 ICCA-eligible International Association meetings in 2024. Then there are trade shows and exhibitions, another enormous slice of the pie. Industry barometers from UFI described 2024 as a record year for exhibition revenues globally, with strong growth continuing in parts of 2025. So the money is real, the momentum is real, and the normalization is real too. If someone says, "I'm going to a conference," nobody asks why. It is treated like brushing teeth, like renewing a driver's license, like a basic adult chore. But conferences are not cheap chores. A modern conference bill is usually a stack of smaller bills that pretends to be one decision. There is the ticket, there is the travel, there's the hotel. There are meals, ride shares, and quick coffees that somehow cost $12. There's the time cost, which is always the quiet killer. Ticket prices alone can reach into the thousands. South by Southwest lists a platinum badge at over $2,000. Dreamforce's full conference pass price is listed at $2,299, with early pricing sometimes starting low. Even conferences that advertise affordable access often shift costs elsewhere. CES has registration options that can be relatively low for some categories, but pass types and the Las Vegas reality can push totals up quickly. Then travel adds its own multiplier. Booking.com's business travel analysis put an average business trip cost in the ballpark of $1,771 for non-senior travelers, and nearly $2,000 for decision makers. GBTA has pointed to elevated travel prices, including a global average airline ticket price of $688 in 2023, and hotel pricing pressures continuing through 2024 and 2025. So when someone says it's just a conference, what they often mean is it's just a few $1,000s plus a week of attention. And that is where the cult-like feeling starts to make sense. Because if a system consistently asks for money, time, and social energy, it has to sell more than information. It has to sell meaning. Conference marketing rarely promises a decent panel and some okay snacks. It promises transformation. Network with the right people. Meet your next investor. Find your co-founder. Get clarity. Level up. Become the version of yourself that knows what they're doing. Of course, sometimes it delivers. Sometimes a conference is exactly what it claims to be. A concentrated place where a field shares knowledge, forms partnerships, and moves faster because people are together. Medical and scientific congresses can accelerate research collaboration. Standards bodies can align on technical decisions. Large industry shows can compress a year of vendor meetings into 3 days. The problem is what happens when the promise becomes automatic and the reality becomes inconsistent. Because the honest truth is that most attendees have wildly different outcomes. One person lands a job lead in a hallway and remembers the event forever. Another person collects a tote bag, eats a pastry, and spends 3 days talking to people who will never reply to a follow-up email. Both people attended the same conference. They will both post about it like it was life-changing. That is not because they are lying. It is because conferences also sell a story you can tell about yourself. This is where social pressure enters the frame. Conferences create a visible in-group, not in a sinister way, in a human way. There are badges, VIP wristbands, speaker ribbons, partner lounges, invite-only dinners that are mysteriously always happening at the exact same steakhouse. There are also rituals: the morning keynote, the standing ovation, the swarm around a celebrity founder, the late-night networking event where everyone pretends they aren't tired even while their eyes look like laptop batteries at 2%. And there is the biggest ritual of all: the public proof that you were there. LinkedIn did not invent conferences, but it supercharged the signaling. The platform rewards visibility. Conferences produce visibility, so attendance becomes content. A badge photo becomes proof of seriousness. A keynote selfie becomes proof of proximity. A group dinner photo becomes proof of belonging. This is why the conference industry can feel cult-like even when nothing weird is happening. The social system reinforces itself. People see others going. They feel behind. They buy the ticket. Fear of missing out is not just a personal emotion. It is a market force. Now, zoom in on startups and founders, because this is where the cost of illusion can get expensive. A 3-person SaaS startup with a pre-seed round, 6 months of runway, and no clear product market fit yet lives in a world of uncertainty. Progress is slow. Product market fit is not guaranteed, and looking like a real company can feel like oxygen. A conference offers something seductive: the illusion of momentum. In 3 days, a founder can have 30 conversations, collect 100 business cards, and take 10 photos in front of logos. It feels like motion, but motion is not always progress. Y Combinator's essential startup advice includes a blunt line: avoid conferences unless they are the best way to get customers. That advice sounds harsh until it is translated into the founder's calendar. A week spent traveling, attending sessions, and doing networking is a week not spent shipping product, calling users, or fixing onboarding. Sometimes that trade-off is worth it, especially if the conference is where the customers actually are. But many founders attend because it feels safer than execution. Execution is lonely. Conferences are social. Execution produces bugs. Conferences produce applause. Execution forces a yes or no verdict from the market. Conferences let you live in maybe. This is not a moral failure. It is human behavior under stress, and the system is built to exploit it. Conference organizers sell access, not outcomes. Sponsors buy attention, not certainty. Speakers sell identity, not necessarily evidence. That does not mean the people involved are cynical. Many are sincere. Many are experts. Many conferences are genuinely valuable, but the incentives tilt toward growth. If a conference can double attendance, it will. If it can add a premium tier, it will. If it can convince attendees that a hallway conversation is worth $4,000, it will. Who benefits most consistently is easier to map than who benefits occasionally. Organizers capture ticket revenue, sponsorship revenue, exhibitor fees, and often data. They also capture the brand of being the place where the industry meets. Sponsors capture visibility, lead lists, and the soft power of being everywhere at once. On banners, lanyards, stage backdrops, coffee cups, and app notifications. Speakers capture status. For some, that status turns into consulting deals, book sales, paid keynotes, and a growing orbit of followers. There is another layer that rarely shows up in the glossy highlight reels: exhibitors. For a B2B company, the booth is often the real product. The carpet, the lighting, the screen wall, the demo stations, the shipping crates, the staff travel, the after-hours dinners. Industry guidance often cites total exhibiting costs in the range of $10,000 to $30,000 per show before the team even scans a single badge. And sometimes the failure is quiet. $20,000 spent, dozens of badge scans collected, and not a single conversation that turns into revenue. A week of activity can look like progress even when the pipeline stays empty. Other calculators and vendors describe typical exhibitor spend per event in the tens of thousands as well, sometimes quoted around $18,000 to $42,000. Once that money is on the floor, the psychology changes. Every passerby becomes a lead. Every handshake becomes pipeline. And the event starts to feel less like a gathering and more like a casino where everyone is counting chips in real time. This is where the cult metaphor gets sharper. The system encourages participants to suspend normal skepticism. People would never spend $30,000 for a random week of meetings in a hotel lobby. But if it is called a premier industry event, it suddenly feels responsible. And then there are the cities, the venues, the hotels, and the entire travel ecosystem that depends on these events being normal. That is another reason the system persists. Conferences did not just feed one industry, they feed many. Now, return to the attendee, because this is where the question of value becomes personal. Most people did not attend a conference purely for information. If information were the only goal, the internet won years ago. People attend for compression, for serendipity, for trust building, for the feeling that they are inside the industry, not watching it from the outside. Those are real needs. Humans learn socially. Deals happen in rooms. Trust is still built face to face. But conferences can also become a substitute for real work, a substitute for community, and a substitute for strategy. That is why the experience swings so hard. Attendees who arrive with a plan often do better. They schedule meetings before landing. They know who they need to talk to. They set a goal that is specific. 10 customer interviews, 3 partner conversations, 1 hiring lead. They treat sessions like optional background noise, not the main event. Attendees who arrive with no plan often get swept into the cult mechanics. They chase the biggest keynote. They float from booth to booth. They attend 3 must-see panels and remember none of them. They leave with the vague feeling of being inspired, then return home to the same inbox, the same priorities, and the same unanswered question. What did this actually change? This is why event ROI has become its own obsession inside the industry. The problem is not just cost, it is attribution. Events consume real budget, but many teams still struggle to prove what the spend actually produced. The industry knows the risk. It just cannot stop selling the dream, because the dream is what fills the room. So, is this a cult? Not in the literal sense, but the conference economy does share a few cult-like traits. It has rituals. It has badges. It has status levels. It has insiders and outsiders. It has a language of transformation. It has a promise of belonging. It has a pressure to attend even when the value is unclear. And it has a fascinating trick. It can make busyness look like progress. That trick is why conferences will keep growing, even as video calls get better. And it is why the question is not, are conferences good or bad? The question is simpler. When does an event create real outcomes, and when does it create a story that feels like an outcome? Because those two things look identical in a LinkedIn photo. They do not look identical 6 months later. And sometimes the lanyard ends up in a drawer beside last year's forgotten phone chargers. If the conference industry is going to keep taking trillions in attention, money, and time, the least it owes the public is honesty about the trade-offs. And the least it owes attendees is the permission to say this out loud. Sometimes the best move is not to go. Not because travel is bad, because the work is waiting at home, and the real progress does not come with a badge.